Welcome to TT-Buddhism, a place where we explore the wisdom of the Buddha, uncover profound truths, and discover how these teachings can bring peace and clarity to our daily lives. Today, we will address a fascinating and often perplexing question. If there is no self, then who attains enlightenment? At first glance, this question seems logical. After all, if there is no permanent I, then who is practicing? Who is learning? Who is awakening? This paradox has puzzled many seekers of truth throughout history, but as we will see, this very question arises from an illusion, the illusion of a fixed, unchanging self. According to Buddhist teachings, what we call the self is not a solid entity, but a collection of ever-changing elements. Our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions arise and fade like waves in the ocean. Yet, we often cling to the belief that there is a permanent me experiencing all of this. This attachment leads to suffering as we struggle to hold on to things that are constantly shifting. In this video, we will explore the Buddha's profound insights into the nature of self and how enlightenment occurs, not as an achievement of an individual, but as a natural unfolding of wisdom when ignorance dissolves. By understanding this, we can let go of unnecessary suffering and embrace a life of greater peace, freedom, and awareness. Let's begin this journey together and uncover the truth beyond the illusion of self. The illusion of who attains enlightenment. One of the greatest misconceptions in our spiritual journey is the assumption that there is a permanent self, a solid, unchanging I that undergoes the process of enlightenment. This assumption is deeply ingrained in the way we think, speak, and perceive ourselves. When we ask, "Who becomes enlightened?" we are already implying that there is someone, a distinct entity, who is progressing toward awakening. However, the Buddha's teachings challenge this very notion, revealing that the self is nothing more than an illusion created by our mind. According to the Buddha, what we call the self is merely a collection of 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These aggregates work together to create the illusion of a continuous identity, but upon closer examination, we see that none of them are stable or permanent. Our body, form, is constantly changing, subject to aging and impermanence. Our feelings fluctuate between pleasure, pain, and neutrality, never remaining the same. Perception, the way we interpret the world, evolves with experience. Mental formations, including thoughts and habits, shift from moment to moment. Even consciousness, which gives us awareness, is in constant flux, arising and passing away with each new experience. To illustrate this, the Buddha used powerful metaphors. He compared the body to foam, feelings to bubbles, perception to a mirage, mental formations to a hollow banana tree, and consciousness to an illusion. These analogies emphasize that nothing we identify as ourselves has true substance or permanence. Yet due to ignorance, we continue to cling to the belief that there is an enduring self behind all these changing elements. This illusion of self leads to attachment and suffering. Because we believe in a fixed identity, we experience fear, desire, and frustration. We become attached to ideas like "I am successful," "I am a failure," or "I must protect my reputation." However, just as a river continuously flows without being the same water at any moment, our sense of self is also in constant motion. When we see this truth clearly, we begin to release our attachment to the illusion of I and move closer to the path of true liberation. So if there is no fixed self, how does enlightenment happen? The Buddha taught that enlightenment is not something that someone achieves. Instead, it is the natural result of wisdom arising when ignorance dissolves. There is no permanent who that attains enlightenment, only the unfolding of awareness when conditions are right. This means that rather than searching for a fixed identity that will become enlightened, we should instead focus on understanding the transient nature of all things. By letting go of the illusion of self, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and open the door to peace, clarity, and wisdom. The question is not who becomes enlightened, but rather, how can we see through the illusion of self? This shift in perspective leads us toward true liberation. How enlightenment happens without a self. Now that we have explored the illusion of the self, the next question arises. If there is no permanent I, then how does enlightenment happen? If there is no fixed entity progressing along the spiritual path, what is the process of awakening? The Buddha taught that everything arises due to conditions. This principle, known as dependent origination, paticca-samuppada, explains that nothing exists independently. Everything is interconnected and influenced by causes and effects. Enlightenment, too, is not something that someone attains, but rather a transformation that occurs naturally when the conditions for awakening are met. It is like the blooming of a flower. A flower does not decide to bloom. It simply blossoms when the right balance of sunlight, water, and nutrients is present. Similarly, enlightenment is not an achievement of an individual self, but the natural unfolding of wisdom when ignorance fades away. The key to awakening lies in removing ignorance, avijja. The Buddha described ignorance as the primary cause of suffering, as it creates the illusion of self and fuels attachment, craving, and aversion. However, just as darkness disappears the moment a light is turned on, ignorance dissolves when we see reality clearly. This is why the path to enlightenment is not about creating or attaining something new. It is about removing the veils of illusion that prevent us from seeing the truth. A powerful metaphor used by the Buddha is that of the sun hidden by clouds. The sun is always shining, but when clouds cover the sky, it seems as though the sun has disappeared. In reality, the sun never ceased to exist. It was simply obscured. In the same way, our true nature, pure awareness and clarity, is always present, but it is often hidden by ignorance, attachments, and distractions. When these clouds dissolve, wisdom naturally shines through. There is no self that becomes enlightened. There is only the disappearance of ignorance, allowing clarity to reveal itself. So how does this process unfold in our daily experience? It begins with observation. By mindfully watching our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions, we begin to see their impermanent and ever-changing nature. Thoughts arise and pass away like ripples on water. Emotions surge and subside like waves in the ocean. Perceptions shift based on circumstances. Through careful observation, we realize that none of these phenomena are me or mine. They simply arise due to causes and conditions. A crucial insight emerges when we notice the space between thoughts, the silent gap where no mental activity occurs. This space is not emptiness in the negative sense, but the presence of pure awareness. It is the vast openness in which all experiences arise and fade. When we recognize this awareness, we understand that enlightenment is not something we achieve in the future, but a realization that is always available in the present moment. As the Buddha explained in the Majjhima Nikaya, when one sees reality clearly, all concepts of I and mine dissolve. This realization is not the result of effort or struggle, but a natural unfolding of wisdom, just as the sky naturally appears clear when the clouds disappear. Enlightenment is not something someone does. It is simply the process of seeing the truth as it is. Applying this understanding to daily life, once we understand that the self is an illusion and that enlightenment is not something someone attains, but rather a natural unfolding when ignorance dissolves, the next step is to apply this wisdom to everyday life. This insight is not meant to remain an abstract concept. It has profound practical implications that can transform how we experience the world. The first and most immediate benefit is the ability to let go of ego and attachment. Much of our suffering comes from identifying with the idea of me and mine. We feel wounded when criticized, frustrated when things do not go our way, and insecure when comparing ourselves to others. However, when we deeply see that there is no fixed self, these attachments begin to lose their grip. For instance, if someone insults us, we usually react with anger or sadness because we perceive it as a personal attack. But when we recognize that there is no stable self being insulted, the insult loses its power. Instead of reacting emotionally, we can observe the feelings arise and pass away, just like clouds drifting across the sky. This does not mean we become passive or indifferent. It means we respond with wisdom rather than automatic reactivity. This understanding also transforms the way we deal with emotions and thoughts. Instead of saying, "I am angry," we can say, "Anger is arising." Instead of "I am anxious," we can say, "Anxiety is present." This subtle shift creates space between us and our emotions, allowing us to witness them rather than be consumed by them. Just like waves in the ocean, emotions naturally come and go. They are not personal, nor do they define us. When we feel overwhelmed by sadness or fear, we can pause and ask ourselves, where is this feeling coming from? Is it permanent, or will it pass? Who is experiencing this emotion? By investigating our emotions in this way, we start to see them for what they are, temporary phenomena that arise and fade due to causes and conditions, not something belonging to a permanent self. This realization allows us to engage with our emotions with greater balance and clarity, neither suppressing nor clinging to them. As this wisdom deepens, it leads to a more spontaneous and liberated way of living. When we stop clinging to a fixed identity, we no longer feel the need to constantly defend or prove ourselves. Life is no longer about chasing external validation or protecting an image of who we think we are. Instead, we experience a profound sense of ease, knowing that everything is in constant change. This shift also positively affects our relation. When we are not driven by ego, we naturally become more understanding, compassionate, and patient with others. We listen more, judge less, and interact with kindness rather than self-interest. Ultimately, recognizing the illusion of self brings a sense of peace, freedom, and joy. It allows us to embrace each moment with clarity and presence, walking the path of wisdom not as someone striving for enlightenment, but as an open awareness that simply witnesses life unfolding as it is. Liberation through wisdom, the path to true freedom. When we deeply understand the nature of the self and see through its illusion, a profound transformation takes place. This realization leads to liberation, not in the sense of escaping life, but in living fully without unnecessary suffering. True freedom is not found in trying to strengthen or protect the self, but in recognizing that there was never a fixed self to begin with. This insight allows us to experience life with openness, wisdom, and peace. The Buddha described enlightenment as the end of clinging, the moment when all attachments to the idea of I and mine dissolve. But this does not mean that life ceases to exist or that we become indifferent. On the contrary, when there is no longer a self to defend, we engage with life more fully. We become more present, more compassionate, and more responsive to the world. The mind is no longer caught in endless worries about identity, status, or control. Instead, we experience life as it truly is, without distortion. A powerful metaphor used by the Buddha is a river carrying a boat downstream. The river flows naturally. It does not need to force itself to move. Similarly, wisdom and liberation unfold naturally when we stop resisting the truth. The Dharma, the truth of existence, carries us forward when we let go of our illusions and attachments. We do not need to become enlightened. We simply need to stop clinging to what is false, and enlightenment will reveal itself. So how does this wisdom manifest in daily life? First, it brings a sense of inner peace. Without the burden of protecting a fragile ego, we stop reacting with defensiveness or fear. Criticism, loss, and failure no longer threaten our sense of self. Instead, we see them as natural experiences that come and go, just like waves in the ocean. We remain steady, just as the sky remains unchanged no matter how many clouds pass through it. Second, liberation leads to genuine compassion. When we are no longer trapped in the illusion of a separate self, we see others as interconnected parts of the same reality. We naturally feel more empathy and kindness, not because we are forcing ourselves to be good, but because wisdom naturally gives rise to compassion. Just as a tree does not try to give fruit, it simply does. Wisdom naturally expresses itself through acts of kindness and understanding. Finally, wisdom brings a deep sense of contentment and joy. We stop chasing after external things to validate our worth. Happiness is no longer dependent on achievements, possessions, or social approval. Instead, it arises from a deep inner stillness and appreciation of life as it is. When we stop identifying with the restless mind, we experience the profound joy of simply being present. The Buddha's last teaching was about diligence, not in achieving something, but in maintaining awareness. Liberation is not a distant goal. It is something we access in every moment when we let go of attachment. There is no me that becomes free. There is only freedom itself, already present, waiting to be recognized. Conclusion: embracing the path of liberation. Through our exploration, we have uncovered a profound truth. There is no fixed self, and enlightenment is not something attained by an individual, but a natural unfolding when ignorance dissolves. By seeing through the illusion of self, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and open the door to a life of clarity, peace, and wisdom. The Buddha's teachings remind us that liberation is not a distant goal, but something available in each moment when we release attachment and embrace the present with awareness. This understanding is not just theoretical. It transforms how we live. When we stop identifying with the ever-changing nature of thoughts, emotions, and experiences, we begin to live with greater ease. We no longer feel the need to defend an identity or chase external validation. Instead, we cultivate a deep sense of presence, allowing life to flow naturally without resistance. We engage with the world with compassion, wisdom, and an open heart, recognizing that true freedom comes not from control, but from letting go. As we conclude, we invite you to reflect on this teaching in your own life. How often do we hold on to an idea of self that causes suffering? How can we practice awareness and let go of unnecessary attachment? Share your thoughts in the comments. We would love to hear your reflections. If you found this video valuable, please like, share, and subscribe to TT-Buddhism for more teachings on mindfulness, wisdom, and inner peace. Be sure to check out our other videos to continue this journey of self-discovery. Thank you for being here, and may you walk the path of wisdom and liberation with an open heart. See you in the next video.